Hey guys, Ryan here, and today, as we are officially about 3 days away from the start of the NFL draft, I figured it would be the right time to finally get my first and only official mock draft video done for the year. So, as you guys know with mock drafts, or if this is your guys' first time watching a mock draft, we will be going through I will be making the picks for all 32 teams. So we will go ahead and put up on the screen over here. We'll go ahead and put up the top 10. And let's go ahead and get right on into it. Again, the first round of the NFL draft is going to be on Thursday. I will be streaming the first round of the draft. So if you guys want to hear my reactions to what the actual picks end up being, feel free to check out that stream again Thursday night. But yeah, let's go ahead and get this one started with what I feel like should be the consensus, which I think is almost everybody's consensus right now, which is that Cam Ward out of Miami will be the first overall pick. I think most everybody probably has that one nailed down at this point. Cam Ward, he's the only Titans canceled their interviews with both the guys from Colorado, Travis Hunter and Shedeur Sanders. So it seems like Cam Ward is basically the consensus, and I think is going to absolutely go to Tennessee. But in terms of Shedeur, I do have him sliding at least a little bit because I think both the Browns and, spoiler alert, the Giants, I think the next two teams have kind of solved their need for, have solved their need at quarterback, at least in the short term, with the Browns bringing in guys like Joe Flacco, and the Giants bringing guys like Jameis Winston and Russell Wilson. I don't think either one of those teams necessarily needs a quarterback at this point, which means I think they both go best player available, which I think probably means that the Browns will probably take Travis Hunter. Meanwhile, the Giants, I think, go Abdul Carter. Now, if the Browns go Abdul Carter, I could very much see the Giants then taking I could see the Giants then taking Hunter, basically just flip those two picks if the Giants go with the other one. But I think that is a pretty big consensus as to how the first three picks are going to go. Cam Ward, Travis Hunter, Abdul Carter. Once we get to pick number 4, here's where I think things really start to open up for the NFL draft, because I think there's a lot more availability. I think obviously the Patriots, they've got two biggest needs right now, which are wide receiver and offensive line. Although I think offensive line is a slightly bigger need than wide receiver. Not to mention, I think you can pick up both in the later rounds. And at least from what I'm hearing, it sounds like Will Campbell is the first offensive lineman to go off the board. Some people have said his short arms could mean he profiles as a guard, but the Patriots could use a guard as well as a offensive tackle, so regardless of which position he ends up at, it seems like he'd be a good Patriot. And I think this lines up the Jaguars pretty well to go ahead and basically have their pick of guys. They could go Mason Graham, they could go Tetairoa McMillan, they could go one of the other wide receivers out there. And there's a lot of good ones in this draft, which is also why I think the Jaguars could wait till the second round, because I think there is the potential for a good one, but I don't think you find someone with the talent of Mason Graham in round 2. I think you got to go with Mason Graham if he's available here. Interior D lineman, great run stopping. Especially run stopping. You don't see a lot of that further down the draft, so I think that is going to be the pick. All right, moving on to the Raiders. I feel like there's a really easy pick that you could make here to go ahead and honestly, if he doesn't go off the board at 4 and 5, I would be absolutely stunned if the Raiders don't. Well, I guess that makes the draft pick kind of obvious. We're going Ashton Jeanty out of Boise State. He's by far, I think, the best running back in the class, and if we don't see someone like Chicago try and trade up to jump the Raiders, I think Ashton Jeanty will be the pick here at number 6 overall. And I'm not doing any trades here because I really don't see too many trade spots open in this draft, so we're going to go ahead and just take Jeanty here and move on to the very next pick. All right, and with pick number 7, I have a feeling I'm just going to make a really bad pick here. I'm going to go out on a little bit of a limb and, Well, I guess it's pretty obvious that I'm making a bad pick considering the jersey I'm wearing. You know what? I'm going to make the best pick I possibly can here. I think it's been pretty obvious for a little while, for a couple of years now, especially the Aaron Rodgers seasons, that the Jets need an offensive lineman, and with Ahmed Membu sitting there, still on the board, again, I think he could be a candidate to be the first tackle taken. It's between him and Will Campbell, I think, as tackle 1 and 2. I think Membu has a better shot to stick at tackle, and he is who I'm going to make the Jets pick here at number 7. So let's just hope it doesn't fail like the Wilson experiment. All right, so with the Panthers on the up, I think this is where we will start to see some of these wide receivers going. I think there are a lot of teams that need wide receiver, but between that and edge, I think those are the only two positions that the Panthers really consider, and I think best player available is somewhere in this group of players. Although I've actually heard quite a few good things about Mike Green out of Marshall, and from the tape I've seen, I could actually see him being a good edge rusher. Good enough to be the second guy off the board. I'm going to say yes. I think the Panthers actually stray away from wide receiver and go edge rusher Mike Green here out of Marshall. Now, do I think that's... I think that one is probably the first really long shot pick. I think those first 7 probably have a pretty good chance at being real. But Mike Green out of Marshall, I could see them maybe going somewhere else, maybe a Walter Nolan, maybe a wide receiver, but I'm ultimately going to go with that pick. And then we get to the Saints, where we got Derek Carr with injury concerns. We got issues at almost every other position, including the cap space. I think that this would be a bad time for the Saints to take a quarterback. I think you just roll with who you got, especially because you did just commit to Derek Carr for another year. So I think you're looking for either wide receiver or D-line. I think you could look at Walter Nolan. I think you could look at the wide receivers, Matthew Golden. I could very much see this being a spot. This is also one of the spots I think that potentially could be a trade out spot if somebody was looking to try and jump, say, the Bears for the running back 2 spot, or if somebody was trying to jump up for a wide receiver, this would be the spot. But again, I'm not doing trades today. I'm going to just have the Saints. I'm going to have them going Tetairoa McMillan. I think he is probably he's probably the second to third best receiver in this class, depending on how you classify Travis Hunter. I do think Matthew Golden's a little bit better than Tetairoa McMillan, but Tet just seems to be more of a Saints type pick here. And then we get to the Chicago Bears. And between that and the fact that Ben Johnson had so much success with a 2 running back system, I think they would be inclined to go running back here. And I think it's either Trevion Henderson or Amarian Hampton. A lot of people are sounding like Hampton's the better of the 2, and I'm going to go ahead and stick with that, actually. I'm going to go ahead and go with what everybody else has been saying, Amarian Hampton as running back 2 here. Because I do think that, again, Ben Johnson, he was the guy that took Jahmyr Gibbs really early in the first round a couple of years ago. Although, obviously, he wasn't head coach or GM. He was the offensive mind in that locker room that made that selection. So, would not surprise me to see the Bears take that. Now, with the San Francisco 49ers, they have lost almost every defensive components on their defense all the way around the board. So I think absolutely this is where they would go ahead and take a defensive player to try and fill in the hole. So, I mean, you've got cornerback, you've got safety, you've got D-line, you've got edge that would probably all be in consideration here. So basically all the defensive spots. You could go Malachi Starks, the safety out of Georgia, although I think it's a better chance that they go with a pure corner. Possibly a Jahdae Barron out of Texas. I think actually that is probably the best spot here. So I'm going to go ahead and give Jahdae Barron to the San Francisco 49ers here. Again, I think that they need a cornerback, especially after they lost Charvarius Ward to the Colts this offseason. I think building up that secondary, because their secondary was already a weakness. Then we get to the Dallas Cowboys, where they are probably going to go after whoever will make the least amount of sense for them, because they make pretty questionable picks a lot. With the fact that they've got needs, though, at offensive line, wide receiver, I could see if, I think between that and the fact that they do seem to have quite a few players on their roster from Texas and that they need him, I think Matthew Golden out of Texas actually makes plenty of sense here to the Cowboys. So I'm going to go Matthew Golden. He's also the guy I think that is probably a little bit better than Ted McMillan. If the Saints were going to go somebody other than McMillan, Golden would have been my pick. Then we got the Dolphins, who need basically people all across the O-line and at both defensive line and corner. I could see a case for Walter Nolan. I've heard a lot. I've got a friend who's a Dolphins fan who really wants Will Johnson. So I could see the case for either one of them. I think I'm going to go ahead and have them go with... I'm going to have them go Will Johnson, because it does sound like they might be losing Jalen Ramsey, either by cutting him or just by looking to trade him for like a second or third rounder. And I think you can find good D linemen further down the draft. Corners are really hard to find past about the second round. So I'm giving them Will Johnson out of Michigan. And now we have the Colts on the board. My team, my Indianapolis Colts. So my personal pick, and this is the guy I'm really hoping will fall to the Colts, Tyler Warren out of Penn State. I think there's a good chance he could go off the board before this point, and I didn't intentionally make him fall to this point because I think there are legitimate players who could go ahead of him, but I think with the need that the Colts have at tight end, I think there's no reason that the Colts shouldn't just go and take him if he is available. And say, if he isn't available, I would absolutely be looking to the offensive line, because I think giving either of the quarterbacks there, whether we start Daniel Jones or Anthony Richardson, I think regardless of which quarterback, I think the better the offensive line is, the better they're going to perform. And if we end up going with a new quarterback, good offensive lines are like the number one thing. So with the Falcons, though, at pick 15, I don't think they go quarterback this year, although it would be hilarious. I don't think they go wide receiver if both Golden and Ted McMillan are off the board. I don't think Luther Burden and I don't think Mecca Ibuka are quite the Falcons style, not to mention they do still, for the moment, have both Drake London and Kyle Pitts, so I don't think they really look for a pass catcher here. I think they go defensive player, and I'm going to give them an edge rusher. I'm going to go James Pierce Jr. out of Tennessee for the Falcons. I think they need an edge rusher, and he just seems to be, in my opinion, one of the best ones still available on the board. For the Cardinals, I think they will be very happy, because I think they want more of an interior defensive lineman, and this is where I will have Walter Nolan going off the board from Ole Miss. Again, they've gotten their edge rushing is pretty decent. It's just kind of stopping the run up the middle. And if Walter Nolan can help stop that, I think that is a great spot for him to potentially fall. Now we have the Bengals. I think should be two thoughts here. You either go offensive line or defensive line. So I think there are a few options available at both spots here. I think you could go Kenneth Grant out of Michigan. I think you could go Donovan Ezeraku out of Boston College. I also think on the offensive line side of things, I think you could go Josh Simmons or Kelvin Banks Jr. Early on in the draft thing, I was pretty high on Kelvin Banks Jr., but the more and more I see of his tape, the more kind of mistakes I'm seeing, and I'm starting to think maybe he isn't the best of the offensive tackles here. I also see Nick Scorton being talked about a lot more. But I think to try and both secure that defensive line and not giving up 50 points a game, I'm going to give Kenneth Grant to the Cincinnati Bengals. I think that pick makes the most sense for them. Again, offensive line, if they go offensive line, I won't be upset about it, but considering the fact that I think they can fill offensive line, especially guard, further down the board, which is more so what they need than tackle. If they pick a good tackle here, they could probably slide one of their existing guys into guard, but I think picking a specialized guard later on in the draft makes more sense, so that's why I'm giving them Kenneth Grant. Then going on to the Seahawks pick, once again, I think edge rusher here is almost certainly going to be the pick. And really, I think this is going to be where I'm going to go with one of those A&M guys, Nick Scorton or Shamar Stewart, and I've heard more good things about Scorton. He looks better on tape. I'm going to give them Nick Scorton here. Yeah, for the Seattle Seahawks. So I guess we'll see how that kind of ages, but now we got the Tampa Bay Buccaneers on the board. Another team that could use edge rusher, another team that could use linebacker help. Jahad Campbell would be a potential option. They also need defensive back, so maybe this could be a spot for Malachi Starks to come off the board. They don't really need wide receiver, although I could definitely see them taking, say, a second or third rounder on a guy to potentially brace themselves for either Mike Evans or Chris Godwin at some point packing up and leaving, but I wouldn't spend my first round pick on it. And honestly, again, where they need linebacker help, I'm going to give them Jahad Campbell. I think he's slightly better than the available edge rushers at the position. And where they need edge, corner, and linebacker, I think a potential coverage linebacker along with the potential edge play, I think just makes the most sense there. Then we get to the Broncos, where they have running back, wide receivers, some of their big needs. Tight end, it was a need coming in, although they've signed Evan Ingram, so that is quote-unquote filled for this year at least, but I would not be opposed to considering Colston Loveland or some of these other guys, but ultimately I think they end up going for a as I say, they're either going to go, I think they're going an offensive weapon in this first round, so it's just going to come down to you go running back, wide receiver, or tight end. And honestly, I think I'm going to end up going with Emeka Egbuka just because I think he fills a much more necessary role for them at wide receiver. And I think that takes a guy off the board that some of their division rivals, like the Chiefs and Chargers, would be looking to take after them, which the more you can mess up the plans for your division rivals, I think that is better. So I'm going to go ahead and give Emeka Egbuka to the Broncos. Pittsburgh, as of right now, they have not signed Rodgers yet, so I am going to go ahead and have the Shedeur Sanders slide. Do I have the Shedeur Sanders slide end here? I've also heard people say Jackson Dart for this position. That's very much a possibility, although I think that would be a very surprising spot. So, Shedeur Sanders, again, I would love to see him. I think he will end up going in the first round, and where we're not doing trades, I think I'm going to have the Steelers take Sanders here. I think that is where I think it's the most likely spot for them to land. Not to mention, especially if they aren't going to have Rodgers, they need somebody to quarterback that team. Then we go to the LA Chargers, and I think this one is pretty simple. They need someone who can catch passes, and for me, that is one of two guys. That's either Luther Burden out of Missouri or Colston Loveland out of Michigan. And as someone who really wanted them to pick up Brock Bowers last year at 5th overall, now granted, Joe Alt has done great, but I really wanted to see them take Brock Bowers last year. I think they go ahead and they will fill their tight end need at Colston Loveland. Again, I think Burden could be great, and I will probably have Burden going off the board here shortly, but I'm going to give them Colson Loveland for the tight end pick. Now, the Green Bay Packers, they haven't picked an offensive skill player in forever. I think it's literally been over 20 years since they took over receiver in the first round. So I think we're going to see them continue that trend and go defense in the in this one too. So the question is edge, corner, or safety. Who do you end up taking? And the fact that Malachi Starks has slid this far, I'm going to say that the Green Bay Packers will take Malachi Starks at this point out of Georgia, a school that they've notoriously loved picking from in the past. I think Malachi Starks makes a ton of sense there for the Green Bay Packers. Then we got the Minnesota Vikings. Here would be another spot where I would see potentially a running back potentially going off the board, although the fact that TreVeyon Henderson would be the only running back I would really consider in this range at this point. So if Hampton was still here, I would probably consider him. Yeah, but there really is once you get past the first 20 picks or so, you start to get into the situation where they're all pretty similar on the spot. So let me just pull up the list. I'm going to have them go Shamar Stewart out of A&M. I do think he is a good edge rusher. It's one of those things where you have two high caliber defensive linemen on front who played college on the same line. It's hard to tell who the star of that program was. I'm going to have Shamar Stewart, though, going to the Minnesota Vikings from Texas A&M. The Houston Texans. As much as I really don't want them to make a good pick here, their two biggest needs being O-line and wide receiver. Luther Burden sitting right there would be a great pick. I could also see a Josh Simmons or a Kelvin Banks Jr. making a lot of sense here. So I think it is really a tough situation here. But if I'm Houston, I'm looking at the fact that you've really struggled to have Tank Dell stay healthy for you, and Luther Burden has managed to stay on the board despite, I think, a couple of spots where he could have gone off earlier. I'm going to have Luther Burden going to the Houston Texans to fill that role. The LA Rams, though, I think O-line to help build around a potential one last chance for Matt Stafford / moving on from him, whichever quarterback you eventually go to move on from him with. I think you're going to want an offensive line to help, and what better offensive line than the offensive line that won the national championship? We're going to go ahead and throw Josh Simmons on the LA Rams here. Again, Kelvin Banks Jr. would be another good option, but it's just one of those things where you're trying to pick one or the other, and I think Josh Simmons is just ever so slightly the better. Then we go to the Ravens here at pick 27. They could definitely be the landing spot for Donovan Ezeraku, Jalen Walker, some of these other edge players, but I also think that they need a corner pretty badly, and if I'm not mistaken, Benjamin Morrison is still on the board here. So I think that you could potentially see one of them going off the board. Also, someone like a Tyler Booker at guard. I mean, he will not be available when you pick later. I'm going to go ahead, though. I'm actually going to go ahead and make the on-the-fly adjustment here and put Tyler Booker on the Ravens because, as I said, a player of his caliber won't be there when the Ravens make their second pick at, I think, pick 59 or something like that. And this, I believe, leaves the Lions open to kind of go with anybody they want. I think Donovan Ezeraku would be a great pick. I think Jalen Walker out of Georgia could be a good pick. Someone to help back up that defense. And ultimately, I'm going to have them going with the guy out of Boston College, Donovan Ezeraku. I think there's a good chance he goes off the board here. Then we end up at the Washington Commanders. I think they need edge. I think edge is by far their biggest need. I would be tempted to maybe make the Jalen Walker pick here, especially if there aren't very many other good edge rushers. But the fact that Michael Williams is still here, and the fact that I think that if he doesn't go to the Commanders, I think the Eagles will absolutely snatch him. So I think the Commanders will make this pick to, 1, keep him away from the Eagles, and 2, to go ahead and help their defensive line. Now for the Bills I think could definitely use an improvement on both sides of the ball, but the fact that Jalen Walker is here, I think, is a absolute dream scenario for the Bills. So I think they go ahead and they will take Jalen Walker out of Georgia. Then we got the Kansas City Chiefs making their pick at long last, and after the absolute abysmal performance in the Super Bowl, I think that there is no shot that they don't take an offensive lineman. It's between Gray Zabel and Kelvin Banks Jr. This is where I'm going to have Kelvin Banks going off the board. He could transfer inside to guard, but I think their bigger need is at tackle. And then we have the final spot, the one team that I don't really believe has a single need, the Philadelphia Eagles. So I think the Eagles could take pretty close to anybody. I think Benjamin Morrison out of Notre Dame could be a good spot. But I also just think that they could literally take anybody. So most of the fun picks, though, like the wide receiver picks, have kind of all gone off the board. So there's not really a fun wide receiver for them to take. I mean, Benjamin Morrison or Chavon Rebel could be a good corner option. Edge/defensive lineman, I think most of the ones that I would consider in the first round have all kind of gone off the board as well. So a lot of their kind of staple picks really aren't there. So I'm going to have them go Benjamin Morrison out of Notre Dame to wrap up this mock draft. And that will be the end of this mock draft. So I'll throw the picture up on the screen for you guys of the full first round, but hopefully you guys enjoyed this mock draft. And again, tune in Thursday evening to watch me react to what the actual draft, what all the picks are. But yeah, hopefully you guys enjoyed. If you guys did enjoy this video, feel free to leave a like, subscribe if you guys are new so you guys don't miss any future videos or live streams. And until next time, hopefully you guys enjoyed, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Watch whatever you guys decide to do with the rest of your night. Have a great night, everybody, and goodbye!